Till now we have seen aggressive nationalism and economic imperialism to be the causes of the First World War. Today we will put our focus on the arms race and the race of armaments as existed in this period. So let us now dive deep into the arms race. So if you remember when we were discussing the features of the First World War, we saw that there was a rampant shift of technology in the weaponry of the First World War. From swords and muskets, we went on to warships, submarines and tanks. However, it's not the advancement in technology of weapons that's the main focus here. It's actually the mass production of the weapons that really draws our attention and that really makes it an armament race. As nations were again racing amongst each other to have the most amount of weapon production. Over here, we see the production factory of German weapons. Let us now see how the armament race led to the First World War. So, if you remember aggressive nationalism, now aggressive nationalism, the sentiment had turned Europe into an assembly of vast armed camps. Because aggressive nationalism had made these countries despise each other. Every country had become the enemy of the other country, and this made them consider the other nation as a threat. And this sensitive threat perception made them skeptic, made them afraid. This skepticism is what was making them rapidly arm themselves. So therefore, each country was heavily arming itself. Why? Because they were preparing for war. As every action taken by another country was perceived as an act of war. So no matter whatever the other country did, always considered to be a threat. And that is why the other country also was arming itself heavily, because they thought a war is about to happen. The peculiar thing of an armament race in this case is that the increase of armament capacity of one nation is interpreted as an inevitable threat by the other. So no matter what happens, an armament race will always inevitably lead to a war. Because if one country starts arming itself, the other country will automatically consider that a threat. And now to respond to that threat, they would be compelled to arm themselves. And this arming and rearming will go on till a war is declared. So an armament race automatically will lead to a war, because an armament race, quite like the race for colonies, was about who has the most amount of military strength. In fact, the armament race became so violent and fierce that the defense spending of the major European nations between the period of 1908 and 1914 had increased almost fourfold. Now, the defense spending of a country is the amount of money they spend towards the maintenance of an army and production of weapons. Now, imagine the amount of fear that existed in the hearts of people and in the governments itself, and the amount of preparedness they were taking for war, that they had to increase the amount of money spent for the preparation of war by 4 times. Now, can you possibly imagine where else this money could have been used? Now the question might come up, is the armament race a sudden phenomenon, or is it caused by some other incidents as well, or is it caused by some other events as well? Well, the armament race, or this stockpiling of arms, which means to increase arm capacity and ammunitions, was actually caused by previous conflicts. As in, these European nations were involved in previous conflicts. The First World War was not the first conflict which involved the European powers. So in previous conflicts, whenever a power had faced humiliation, then these powers wanted to seek revenge, and they were only waiting for a chance to get revenge. And while they were stockpiling the arms, they were only waiting so that they can again attack and get their pride back. The best example of this would be France after its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War. Now, about the Franco-Prussian War. The Franco-Prussian War was fought between France and Prussia, the largest German state before Germany became a unified country. And this had led to the humiliating defeat of France at the hands of Prussia. Prussia had made France surrender almost 500,000 soldiers along with the Emperor of France itself, and this happens to be one of the largest surrenders in human history. Now, France was only waiting to get a chance to get not only its lost pride back, but also the captured territories of Alsace and Lorraine, which Prussia and then therefore Germany had captured from France. Now, can you answer this question? Which one of the following European nations was defeated in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870? Was it Germany? Was it France? Was it Netherlands, or was it England? The correct answer is France, who was defeated in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. So as we saw in the case of France and multiple other European nations, there existed distrust among the nations, and this distrust was leading to skepticism. The existing rivalries, as in the nations who had some previous conflicts and henceforth they had rivalries, this created skepticism. So what is skepticism? Well, let me paint you a picture. Let's say you have a friend who you trust dearly. Now one fine day he does something which shakes your trust in him completely, but he does not confess to it, he does not commit to it, and you come to find about it from some other person. Now no matter whatever he says, you would not be able to trust him, because it's a human tendency to question everything once the trust is shaken. Even if he says that the sun rises up in the east, you would be looking at Google to see whether it's correct or not. So that is what skepticism is. It's a tendency to question everything. Now, this skepticism, when implemented in a political situation, was creating the lack of communication and distrust in the European nations. And this skepticism was actually making the nations afraid. Both sides thought that the other side might declare war on me at this very moment. And this paranoia was leading them to arm themselves to the teeth. Now, in such situation, communication is very important. If your friend one day comes up to you and says that I'm sorry for what I did, I will never repeat it again. If he commits, then you might be able to forgive him. But if he never does that, this distrust will only increase. Similarly, in Europe, this situation could have been averted if there existed proper international peacekeeping and collaboration mediums, such as organizations, such as open diplomacy, where nations come together and they solve problems together. Instead, what's happening over here was quite the opposite, as we will see when we read about the secret diplomacy, where nations were having relations with each other in secret, and this is even causing more and more fear, more and more distrust, and it's creating a vacuum. Now, when this vacuum is created, something is filling it up. It's filled by nations despising each other, suspecting each other, and therefore preparing for war against each other once the day comes. The arms race was unfortunately also supported by capitalists. Now, normally when a war happens, the business class is often discouraged by it. They think that this will affect the industry. However, the capitalist classes of Europe thought that this is a good opportunity to earn money from it. So what happened is a new race of war profiteers came up. Their business minds kicked in. Now they thought that what does war create? War creates emergency demand for uniforms, for rations, for military vehicles, and most importantly, for weapons. So therefore, Krups in Germany and Vickers Armstrong in England, among other capitalists, joined the arms race as weapon producers. They got huge contracts from the government, And not only they joined the war effort, they also funded it. They managed to fund nationalist propaganda. They were the ones paying for all those posters, all those trade cards, which was fueling propaganda within the hearts of people and making them more afraid and more ready for war. Because if the world goes to war, their pockets will be filled. So these war profiteers managed to capitalize off the war as well. Because for capitalists, the war is not a hindrance, it's an opportunity. Now, in this situation, we will now trace the role of Germany into the armamentaries. And how did one nation escalate the arms race as we know it? Now, over here we see SMS Deutschland. Now, this was a pride of the German Navy in the early 20th century and also happens to be a symbol of the new German Navy. Let us now trace the role of Germany in this escalation. Now, as we have witnessed, Germany had become an imperial power upon its establishment. Now, we have seen that Germany had acquired colonies in Africa, and also a few islands in the Pacific. So these were the new colonial interests of Germany, and Germany is extremely protective about it because they feared that the other imperial powers which were settled in India or Indonesia, which meant the Britishers and the French, they could easily come and take their newly established colonial interests. Therefore, they needed some sort of protection. Therefore, to protect her newly established colonies, Germany developed a modern and powerful navy. This was meant to protect its overseas interests because the German army could not reach everywhere Germany had colonies, but a navy could. Now, the Germans introduced a new class of warships. Now, these warships were much wider and also much more stronger than the previous generation. To accommodate these warships to pass through Germany all the way into the North Sea, it had to pass through the Kiel Canal, which is right over here. The canal had to be widened to accommodate these new warships. But when Germany went on to widen the Kiel Canal, England over here perceived this move as a threat against its own borders, its own sovereignty, because England thought that upon the widening of the Kiel Canal, Germany could easily come and attack England with its new class of warships. Simultaneously, Germany also began building the Berlin-Baghdad railway. Now, this railway was supposed to connect Berlin, which is the capital of Germany, to Baghdad, which lies in the heart of Asia. Now, this move was specifically done so that Germany could acquire interests in Asia. But this move was also perceived by Britain as a threat against its colonial interests in India, which lies extremely close to Baghdad. So, as we saw, these moves by Germany were perceived as a threat by Britain because Britain till this point had an undefeatable naval prowess. No one was able to match Britain's naval prowess, but by widening the Kiel Canal, what Germany did was directly pose the statement that if the need comes, their warships could easily fight against Britain's navy. Similarly, when Germany started building the Berlin-Baghdad railway, it showed that Germany was prepared to fight against Britain if the need comes to acquire new colonies in Asia. Therefore, the armament race found its height in this Anglo-German rivalry because this situation caused a conflict to rise up between Britain and Germany. And this conflict was for achieving naval prowess over each other, because the purpose of this entire conflict and the rapid armament amongst each other was to see who has the best navy in the entire world. So therefore the purpose was to have the better navy over the other. So what did we see till now? We saw how an armament race existed in Europe. We saw how the modern technologies available to the Europeans at this point made them rapidly arm themselves. And this is because there existed skepticism and fear in their hearts, which found an outlet through this arming of weapons. We also saw the role Germany played in aggravating this conflict and leading the arms race to the doors of the First World War. Now, this entire situation is best put forward and summed up by a historian who said that Europe was practically sitting on a heap of gunpowder, and all Europe required was a matchstick to blow the entire thing out of proportion. And that's practically what happened, and you will see this in the upcoming videos.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers, or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.